Welcome to Men of God. Today, we're diving into the life of a truly monumental figure. I mean, this is a man whose voice still echoes with just incredible force. All right, so to really get a handle on Charles Spurgeon, you've got to understand the sheer scale of his influence. People called him the Prince of Preachers. And look, that wasn't just some catchy nickname. It was a reality. It perfectly captured his almost royal-like status back in the Victorian era. Just try to picture this for a second. A church in 19th century London with room for 6,000 people. Now imagine it being packed to the rafters every single week. Well, that was Spurgeon's Metropolitan Tabernacle. His ability to pull in and just hold on to these massive crowds was a testament to this really rare mix of charisma, incredible eloquence, and a message that just hit home for people. But his reach, oh, it went so far beyond the walls of that church. I mean, just look at these numbers. They're absolutely staggering. By 1863, 8 million copies of his sermons sold. By the time he died, that number shot up to 50 million. And by the end of the century, get this, over 100 million of his sermons had been sold in 23 different languages. We're talking about global influence, all powered by the printing press. So you have to ask, right? How did a young guy with zero formal university education become one of the most influential people of his entire generation? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back to the beginning. Spurgeon's rise was, nothing short of meteoric. This timeline lays out a trajectory that's almost hard to believe. He preached his very first sermon when he was only 15 years old. By 16, he's already got his first pastorate. And then, just a couple of years later, in 1854, he gets the call to pastor London's largest Baptist church. It was just an explosive ascent. But here's where his story gets really interesting. Kind of unconventional. Spurgeon never went to university for theology. Nope. His incredible knowledge was hammered out through intense self-study. He devoured a huge personal library filled with Puritan theology and history. And, taking this independent route gave him this really powerful, unfiltered way of seeing things. It let him connect with everyday people in a way that, frankly, the academic elite just couldn't. And it was that independent study that let him build this absolutely unshakable theological foundation, the very bedrock that would define his entire ministry. So what was it that he preached that was so powerful? Well, the core of his theology was Calvinism. But here's the thing. For Spurgeon, this wasn't some dry academic ism. He flat out said it was the gospel and nothing else. That conviction, that certainty, was the engine driving every single sermon he ever gave. This theology, it's often broken down into 5 key points, sometimes called the doctrines of grace. And really, they all point to one big idea, that God is sovereign, completely in control of a person's salvation from start to finish. Now, for Spurgeon, that wasn't a limiting idea at all. It was liberating. It meant salvation was a totally secure gift of grace, not something you had to earn or worry about losing based on your own shaky efforts. For him, to not preach this, to hide this truth, that would have been a betrayal of the gospel itself. But look, for Spurgeon, faith was never just a checklist of doctrines you had to believe. No way. It had to be lived. His theology wasn't meant to just sit on a shelf in a book. It was meant to get its hands dirty and actually build a better world. And nothing shows his commitment better than this, 66. So what's that? Well, that's the estimated number of ministries he founded. Think about that. He didn't take the huge profits from his sermon sales and build a personal fortune. Nope. He poured it all into building institutions that served other people. And this is just a quick look at the kind of work he was doing. He started a college to train up pastors, especially guys who couldn't afford a formal education. He founded the famous Stockwell Orphanage for both boys and girls. He set up funds to get books into the hands of poor pastors, organized food and clothing drives for the needy. You see, his theology had hands and feet. His approach to money was, well, it was radical, and it speaks volumes. Even though he was earning what would be millions in today's money from his books and sermons, he funneled it all right back into his ministries. And the proof is right there. He died with almost nothing to his name. He really saw himself as just a manager, a steward of the money that passed through his hands, not the owner. But holding on to that kind of conviction, especially in a world that was rapidly changing, a world that was starting to embrace modernism and new scientific ideas, well, that came with a huge price, both personally and professionally. The single biggest fight of his life was something called the downgrade controversy. He basically went to war against what he saw as the watering down of core Christian beliefs inside his own denomination, the Baptist Union. So on one side, you had Spurgeon championing the absolute, unchanging authority of the Bible. And on the other, you had a lot of his colleagues who were starting to embrace modern ways of criticizing the Bible and more, let's say, liberal theological ideas. It was a massive clash of two completely different worlds, and that fight took a massive toll on him. It eventually led him to pull out of the Baptist Union entirely. He even confessed to his friends, "The battle is killing me." This wasn't just some intellectual debate, you know. It was a deeply personal, heart-wrenching conflict that his own wife said literally cost him his life. And on top of this huge theological battle, he was dealing with just immense personal suffering. He was plagued by this chronic, agonizingly painful disease called gout. He carried lifelong psychological trauma from a terrible disaster early in his career where a false shout of fire caused a stampede that killed 7 people. And all the while, the press and the academic world were constantly making fun of him, calling him a dinosaur who was out of step with modern times. And yet, despite all the controversy, despite all the suffering, or maybe even because of how he persevered through it all, his legacy has only grown stronger since he died. I mean, his influence today is everywhere in so many different forms. His sermons and books are still huge bestsellers all over the world. His daily devotional, morning and evening, is an absolute classic. You'll see his quotes pop up all over social media, and his courage, it still inspires countless pastors and leaders across the globe. Ultimately, it was his stubborn, unwavering commitment to what he believed was the pure, unaltered truth of the gospel that ensured his ministry would last long, long after he was gone. His entire life's work was laser-focused on one thing, pointing every single person he could to Christ. And in doing that, he left a mark on the world that you just can't erase. And that really leaves us with a final big question, doesn't it? When you look at a life like Spurgeon's, what do you think is the secret sauce for a truly lasting legacy? Is it the massive worldwide success? Is it the rock-solid conviction that never wavers? Or is it that quiet strength to persevere through unimaginable suffering? Maybe it's the powerful mix of all three. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer on the life of Charles Spurgeon. We really hope it gave you something to think about, something inspiring.